Hello and welcome to Lestering Pages with Max Page, and today I have Jordan Lester with me because Chris is not here, but I will introduce him more in a little bit. I missed my top of the hour, my ID, followed behind here. Chris, where are you? We're here in the studio tonight, though. We have it all to ourselves, and it's really nice. So today, because Chris isn't here, we're going to kind of indulge in a couple guests. We have a potential guest for later on tonight named Brendan King, but I don't know if he's going to make it out. And for the start of our show, we're going to talk to Jordan Lester. Now, Jordan Lester is a communications and poli-sci student at MUN. He's been on a lot of different societies at MUN, including the exec of the MUN Poli-Sci Society and the founder of the MUN Communications Society. He's also been on the executive of a resource center, MUNDIS, from 2009 to March 2012, and he was the chief returning officer of the MUN student union elections from November 2009 to May 2010, which meant that he got to do both a by-election and a normal election. Jordan, thank you very much for joining us. Let me make sure that your mic is on. Jordan, let's test out these mics. This is the first time we've tested them out all night.
Thanks for having me on your show, Max.
No problem. So, sorry, Jordan, are you on G1 or G2? I turned them both
I'm on G2.
Okay, cool. I'm turning off G1, and I think we still got you there. So, Jordan, thank you very much for coming on.
No problem.
So
Glad to be on your show.
Jordan is a communication student, so this is kind of right up his alley, and we're going to try to get through as much information as possible. Jordan, like myself here soon, and a lot of MUN students in the past, are learn a lot while we go to this school, and we want to make sure that we pass and share on the information that we've learned to future generations.
Absolutely.
So, Jordan, could you please maybe start by explaining to us your experience with MUN and how long you've been here and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, I'm going to tell you a little narrative, use some narrative theory. Okay, so first of all, I graduated high school at Bishop's College High School here in St. John's up on Old Pennywell Road in June 2006. Came into MUN straight out of high school, pretty much. Did some work for an advocacy organization, nonprofit with regard to disability advocacy. Realized, I want to be an advocate. So I come to MUN in September 2006, right in the middle of possible discussions about MUNSU going through a bylaw review. Sound familiar? Yeah, I've been here at MUN so long, I've been through 2 bylaw reviews.
Wow, those don't happen very often.
Yeah. So what essentially happened was I was a BA undeclared arts student who was thinking about doing pre-social work, and that's where I got a lot of exposure to advocacy, campaign, social justice, having to do 20 to 35 hours of volunteer work in the last 2 semesters before it applied to the faculty. Kind of got me realizing, hey, there's lots of cool clubs and societies to get involved with. Like, for example, the MUN Rights and Democracy delegation. So we did some campaigns about the privatization of bottled water. We talked about human rights. We talked about a lot of these things. And so I guess I can call myself an investigative activist, a citizen journalist, for lack of a better term, who's also an activist. And yeah, I've been involved with the MUN Disability Information Support Center. I also had another stint last fall, up until like a week ago, where I was dealing with their finances. And also on top of that, I was the chief returning officer, got to deal with an election where the director of student life was elected by 1 vote.
Wow.
In a 4-way race, and that person is
Lucky
now...
you.
Yeah, I've been through a lot, and I could be here all night if I had to tell you everything. Just trying to give the listeners a bit of an idea of what they're in for tonight.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those aspects of yourself with us. I'm going to ask you one more little bit about you, so
absolutely,
myself and our listeners know more about you before we go to our first commercial break. So, Jordan, could you also share with us what role you play with the union right now, more of as a free agent right now? So, could you explain that role a little bit as well, please?
Yeah, as you might know if you were paying attention to the Muse, I was a candidate for Executive Director of External Affairs, Communications and Research, but I'd put in a request in January 2014 for a review of the election regulations to some people who I thought were on the elections committee and to the current CRO, Kevin Delahunty. And not a whole lot happened with that, and I just went, it must be in the works, keeping it on the down low. And then I get the election regulations, and I'm reading the date, and I'm like, These are from August of 2008. These are the same election regulations I used back when I was chief returning officer in November 2009, May 2010, and we just went through a bylaw review where we updated our entire constitution.
And that stuff, that kind of provoked you into actually withdrawing in the end?
From withdrawing in protest and doing a prompt interview with Laura Howells that I just planned on withdrawing quietly, but it went up on social media that the position got acclaimed, so naturally I start being flooded with Facebook messages of, Jordan, have you withdrawn? Like, what's going on? And so when Laura Howells offered the interview, just a couple hours before the Clubs and Societies Forum, I do the interview, and then much to everyone's surprise, I'm sitting in the audience, and they're like, why aren't you sitting up with us? I'm like, I'm a free agent now. And I guess that's what I'm going to be for the remainder of my time at MUN.
And I mean, even before that, even in the last year, I remember you as being somebody who was very involved and vocal and stuff like that.
I'd run for the Students with Disabilities rep in a by-election November 2012, and I'd once tried to become director at large in March 2009. I didn't do very well. It was fun. 12 people running for 3 positions.
Wow. And, I mean, you're also, you've been featured in the Muse before. You're on Facebook all the time, and Jordan's one of the few kind of members of our student body who actually comes and pressures and lobbies the union. So we are going to go to commercial break, but I did want our listeners to understand and learn a little bit more about Jordan Lester. I met Jordan myself a couple of years ago, and he's been really inspirational and a leader, and really has been leading by example. For myself, I find it hard sometimes, even as a board member, to drag myself to meetings, but Jordan actually comes to these meetings, articulates the interests of not just himself, but the people around him, and he's truly, to me anyways, a really inspirational person. And I'm really glad to have you on, and we're really excited to hear all about your opinion and perspective about things after our break. So this is where I now try to...
So stay tuned.
Goes to break. So stay tuned on CHMR 93.5 with Lestering Pages, a.k.a.
Special edition.
A.k.a. Wrestling Pages, a.k.a. the Jordan Lester Power Hour. Great. Cool. 1 second. Let's see how I can do this.
Yeah, we'll be right back after a short commercial break.
Daybreak Healthy Baby Club is a free support group for pregnant youth ages 21 and under. Information on pregnancy is provided and discussed along with a meal and a nutritional supplement certificate. The group meets twice a week on Tuesdays from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. and Thursdays from 1 to 3 p.m. Registration is required. Please call Crystal or Florence at 726-8373.
Go ahead, kitty. Go outside.
Outside? What are you, crazy? It's a dog-eat-cat world out there. Please, not outside. I could get hit by a car. Pick up some disease. Get chased by the neighbor. Be rained and snowed on. It's a jungle out there. I'm staying inside where I'll be happy, healthy, and live 3 times longer than an outdoor cat.
Do you know where your cat is? For more information on keeping cats happy and safe indoors, call your local animal shelter or the Canadian Federation of Humane Societies.
And we're back on Rustling Pages with Max tonight, and Jordan's here with me. Da-da-da-da-da. It's kind of nice being in here all by myself. I don't have to feel like I have to impress Chris, and feel like there's a lot of pressure being meeting his standards. And Chris, if you're out there, what's up? I'm here with Jordan. Yeah, so Jordan, we're gonna get into some of the questions that I have to ask you. We hope that after this interview, we can hopefully get some stuff on the record and institutionalize some stuff on the internets and the airwaves that we hope maybe can help people in the future. I personally know when I started here at MUN, it was really hard for me to find the information that I wanted and wanted to hear about, and I hope that we can hopefully make it a little easier for people in the future. So, Jordan, you're a well-informed guy. What's going on with MUN current events right now? What are the big topics that you are noticing? Well, maybe 5 minutes to talk about this?
Well, absolutely. I mean, one of the first things you'll notice, depending on what circles you're in on Facebook, is you might see your Facebook or Twitter blowing up with updates about the provincial budget.
Provincial budgeting. Woo.
Yeah, apparently what's happening over the next 2 years, I've been analyzing it at length over the next hour. Over the next 2 years, we're going to be going from a provincial student loan to a non-repayable needs-based grant, which is something the student movement in this province has been calling for decades, and actually it used to exist up until the late 80s, early 90s. So back to the future.
Getting it in. Cool. That's so good. So what is it? Do you know, what's your kind of interpretation of what is a needs-based grant?
Well, basically what it means is that you're being given basically a non-repayable loan. You're being given money to cover your tuition and that type of thing, but you don't have to pay it back. So basically what they do, once being a Bachelor of Social Work student comes in handy, this is what's called a needs-based assessment, where basically what they do is, I guess they look at your socioeconomic status, like what's your income,
how much you're making over the summer.
Yeah, how much are you making over the summer, how much you make in a year, how much do your parents make, and so are you considered in need that you wouldn't be wealthy enough to pay for tuition? And so, okay, we're going to give you this non-repayable loan, and they call it a need-based grant because grant is money you're given that you don't have to repay. So basically, over the next 2 years in the budget, they're going to be slowly phasing out student loans and increasing the grant component, because there are some people right now who get the provincial student loan who get a grant with it. What they're doing is they're gradually phasing up the grant to take the place of the provincial loan, but you're still going to have to pay the federal loan.
Yeah, let me try this. What I want to try in light of this is I want to do kind of like some thanks. So I think for something like this to be articulated and provoked, a lot of things happen. First off, we need to thank the administrators and people who are our politicians for prioritizing this. We got to thank them. We have to thank all of our own students and local community members who've signed petitions. I'd also like to thank everybody who's ever challenged the ideas of this stuff, who provoked discussion and who provoked discourse and provoked people to come out and speak very sincerely and authentically about it. And maybe we should make sure to thank CNA, Grenfell Campus Marine Institute, the Graduate Students Union, and MUNSU, as well as the CFS, provincial and national, and everybody who's ever really articulated interest on it. I mean, what this is doing is it's making education that much more available, and it's there's a lot of study around it, but everybody should. This is for a lot of people, I believe, a time of celebration, and people should be not being undervalued or under-recognized or anything like that. And I'm sure, Jordan, you probably played a role in it. I know that I was a big... I definitely made sure people knew it was happening, but people that it was being talked about.
I guess there's benefits to this type of thing, that if people's focus isn't on worrying about how they're going to pay for their school, as you mentioned in your feature this week in the Muse, people can spend more time thinking about activism, thinking about what kind of job do I want to do when I graduate? What kind of volunteer work do I want to do? Like, what awesome clubs and societies, resident societies, and resource centers do I want to get involved in? Still, you're going to have to pay back the federal portion, but man, based on some of the stuff I see, the savings could be huge. Unfortunately, if you're coming in before this announcement, you still got debt, but don't worry, you should look at the provincial government website. There's some programs you should probably apply for to help.
So what else is happening at MUN nowadays, or in the last little while?
Well,
and we're before talking about the elections.
Yeah.
And, before talking about MUN and MUNSU and stuff like that, what are just some other interesting things
going on? Well, right now in the Parliament of Canada, I was just watching earlier. There's a debate on a law. It's called the Canada Nova Scotia Offshore Safety Act. It's in response to basically an inquiry that happened about offshore safety in the oil and gas sector, and basically creating a regulatory body just to make sure that health and safety standards are being met, that labor movements, workers, that as we're extracting the oil, that's helping to fund our social programs, fund needs-based grants, fund this university and our society, basically, that we're not compromising the health and safety of our workers who work fearlessly, overnights, long hours, to make sure that we can get those natural resources out into global markets, local markets, so that we can reap the benefits.
Yeah, that's interesting. And now, on something that's a little more micro and probably not nearly as significant, do you see anything interesting on Spotted at MUN lately?
Well, I mean, I've seen some funny stuff. Just to lighten it up a bit, apparently now there's a Spotted at Mun beard edition, which, I mean, I very much approve of because I love beards myself.
I just spotted a man in CHMR at around 11:20 with a wicked awesome looking beard. That's going up there on the website. I know you guys can't see it, but it's real. I'm being for real. Jordan's got a sweet looking beard. So what we'll do is, or what I'd like to do is, I'm trying to think of the best way to break up our questions so that we can still schedule a half-hour break, or a break in the middle. So I think what I'd like to do, Jordan, and we've learned a lot about you, and you're obviously well-informed and well-spoken, and I appreciate it that you're also very soft-spoken. To anybody out there, Jordan is one of the most approachable people, so if you have anything interesting, if you hear anything interesting, make sure to get in touch with him.
Look me up on Facebook.
So you've thought a lot about the Students' Union. What do you think the most important aspects are of the union? Why is the union important, first off, to you?
Well, first of all, as you may or may not know, if you look at provincial government legislation, MUNSU has been provincially incorporated since 1969. So actually, this is provincial government legislation that actually outlines exactly what it is MUNSU does as a privately incorporated body.
And then in the MUNSU, basically the MUNSU and the CSU mandates and bylaws, it kind of outlines what the union does. So basically, the
big thing that got me interested when I first came to MUN is that student union fees are mandatory. As you might have heard on Wrestling Pages last time, there were efforts once to not have to pay fees, and students occupied the Arts and Admin building in the 70s, and yeah, university hasn't tried that again. But anyway, what happens is you pay anywhere between $20 to like $100 in basically student union fees to the student union, Canadian Federation of Students, Newfoundland and Labrador, Canadian Federation of Students. You'll hear a lot of people say CFS, and they'll be like, what's CFS? If you Google it, you might accidentally find Computers for Schools or some other really awesome word, just to make sure people know their acronyms, because people listen all around the world. But basically, what makes it important is that this is the body that's been set up to represent your academic interests, your social interests, your economic interests, your political interests. If, like me, you're very passionate about something, you can create a club or society. You know, let's just say you were big into poets. Well, you could have a MUN Poet Society. And you can get funding from the student union to help fund your efforts. You can help get money to fund mixers and have colloquiums and seminars and talks. But what I really love is the 7 resource centers that help to defend the rights of historically marginalized and oppressed groups like women, students with disabilities, Aboriginals, LGBT, students older than average, student parents, and international students. Yes, I got all 7.
Boom. That was a high five. If you guys could hear that back home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what do you think is kind of the most important aspects to making sure that this body is operating to the capacity that you are, or the standards, the expectations that you're setting for it right now? When you just talked about all the variety of different things that the union does for people, what are the most crucial pillars that that really bring out or actualize the potential of this union?
Well, I would have to mention 3: accountability, transparency, and elections. So first, on transparency, just the fact that we can come here and have this conversation on wonderful student media like CHMR-FM,
endorsed by the Students' Union.
Yep, and funded by the Student Union.
Funded by the union. We're paying diddly squat. Actually, we're paying about $1 a semester,
which is pretty good
fee.
if you think about it.
Yeah, we have studios, we have maintenance that covers our staff, it's lighting, that's all of our CDs.
There's free training.
It's a steal.
Well, yeah. So anyway, transparency, the fact that board meetings are basically broadcasted on CHMR-FM. So, I mean, anytime on Wednesday, 5 p.m. to like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Newfoundland time, just in case you're listening from another time zone, Newfoundland Standard Time, you can listen into the meetings. And if you feel so inclined and you're at MUN St. John's campus, you can even show up and, like myself, sit in the gallery, raise your hand, ask lots of awesome questions, get lots of answers to, well, why is it that I did an ERTS audit? Why is it taking me 4 months to get my ERTS audit? You know, they can go, oh, well, I'll look into an answer. This is the thing. This is not some abstract thing. This is about your socioeconomic interests as a student. I mean, as students, oftentimes we don't have a whole lot of money to live on. And one of the things the student union can do, let's just say you've been given a 0 for plagiarism or something, and actually there's no merit to the accusation. One of the things that can happen is the executive director of advocacy can actually help you file an appeal to the university. So MUNSU's in your corner if you have an academic problem or...
And you think that that kind of relates to it being transparent?
Yeah, and this is where transparent comes in. And then there's the accountability. We have things like recall, for example, that if we feel a faculty, school, constituency rep, director at large, or executive director, just felt it was important to list the 5, are not properly doing their job, you can actually start a petition to remove them from office.
Absolutely.
If you get a certain... I think it used to be 5 or 10%, but now it's been raised to like 10 or 15 or 20. Can't quite remember. But anyway, the point is you got that. You have referendums, like the Muse has been like, hey, you know, we need more funding to fund our...
We need more money.
So, you know, you can call a referendum on that. You can call referendums on other issues. And most awesomely, committees of the student union and board are open to all members. So you can just show up and have your say. And then on the third plank, elections, obviously we live in a democracy. And it's not good enough to just be able to talk to the people who hold these positions, but you can nominate yourself, you can run, you can be a campaign worker, a campaign manager, you can go to the debates like I did, ask questions, find out about all the awesome stuff going on, like, hey, why's the Ross Reed Theater been closed for 2? Oh, it's, you know, complicated, and find out about that stuff. And so, yeah, I feel that all these tie in together, and as you can tell, I'm a little bit of an intersectional guy. I tend to try to tie everything together.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I think what we're going to do, I mean, that's early for our second break, but now that we've kind of hinted about the Pandora's box of the night, which is our elections, what I think we should do is stop here, take our little break, and then we'll come back and we're going to talk about with the experiences that Jordan has and the roles that he's played with, like, once again, I want to say the roles that he's played with different societies, resource centers, and as an employee of the union running the elections. I'd really be interested in hearing, Jordan, from what you believe. Maybe explain to us about how the elections process works from your experience and opinion and your interpretation. You could maybe even give us some recommendations.
Oh,
as
absolutely.
Well. So now this is where I'm going to once again try to seamlessly go into the break. Just a second now, and here we go.
Stay tuned. You ain't seen nothing yet.
And play. Turn.
Do the party shake.
Every Saturday night from 7 to 9 p.m., join your hosts, Warren and Chelsea, for the party. Only on 93.5 CHMR-FM.
There will be an Autism Awareness Day panel on April 2nd. The theme is Solutions and Strategies for Everyday Life. It is taking place from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. at 70 Clinch Crescent behind the Health Science Center. This has been a public service of CHMR's 93.5.
One of the greatest scientific minds of our time, Albert Einstein, once said, "If I were not a physicist, I would probably be a musician. I often think in music. I live my daydreams in music. I see my life in terms of music." If music is an important part of your life, you should tune into CHMR-FM every Sunday at noon for The Songwriters. Each week, we explore the world of music with the artists that populate that world. Hear the music through the ears and minds of the artists that produce it on The Songwriters every Sunday at noon and only on 93.5 CHMR-FM.
Oh, we were having a funny conversation in the break, weren't we, Jordan? Mm-hmm. Yes, we were. Yeah. Welcome back to our show. This is Rustling Pages with Max Page solely right now, a.k.a. Lestering Pages with Max Page and Jordan Lester, a.k.a. the Jordan Lester Power Hour, a.k.a. CHMR 11 o'clock on Thursday nights. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that. What do you got, Jordan? What's going on?
What I got? Chris Russell just messaged me on Facebook.
Who's Chris? Yes. I know Chris Russell.
And apparently he wants you to FaceTime with him so he can take a screenshot for the YouTube video. That's one of the other benefits of Rustling Pages. It actually gets uploaded to YouTube, so you can actually listen to a recording of this down the road.
Okay, let me try to do this.
Here goes.
Are you out there? There's Jordan. Anybody out there on Radioland, you can't tell, but Jordan and I are basically taking a selfie / a FaceTime video with Chris. Hi, Chris. What up? Can you hear? Hey, Radioland, can you hear Chris? Chris, talk.
Does Radioland hear me?
Talk into the mic. You are Radioland, Chris. You are Radioland.
Can you hear me?
Look at that delay.
Yeah, so I mean, it can definitely be heard. So
okay, I don't know why we're doing this.
Literally, you're now on Lestering Rustling Pages, or Rustling Lester
Lestering Pages. No, I don't have a cord. I never got a cord. You're talking literally into the mic. Anyways, I gotta go because I'm on the radio.
Dude, okay.
That's my co-host Chris. He's the man. Bad time. All right, Jordan. Anyway, sorry, that was a huge distraction.
Oh.
That was like an existential kind of weird metaphysical, like, what is going on right now?
Well, apparently someone in Radioland was listening and messaged me on Facebook to say that they could hear Chris Russell. So apparently some people did message me on Facebook. So
there you go, Chris.
Good to know there's someone in Radioland listening.
Chris, your voice was heard, man. Your voice was heard.
It's very important for your voice to be heard, which is a nice little segue into what we're going to talk about next.
And we're talking about not the MUNSU 2014 elections, but we're talking about the idea of the elections and the nature of the MUNSU elections. I think I'd like to go about saying that I think basically since the union started, they've been electing people democratically, and same with the union bylaws, policies, and the elections themselves. These documents have evolved and adapted over time to fulfill the needs of the people who are in charge of them. So there are going to be holes in all of these documents, particularly because the needs and the priorities of people are always changing. So we can't necessarily undervalue where the election regulations are now, because it's a simple manifestation of what people needed in the past. So what we're going to do, Jordan, is as we learn about the role of CRO, and as I ask you questions about it, we'll wait until the end, and maybe we can offer some recommendations and some solutions and stuff like that, and why you think those recommendations will be.
Sure.
Good. So what I'm going to do is, the first question I'm going to ask you is, what is the role of the Chief Returning Officer?
So basically, your role as chief returning officer is to make sure the election goes smoothly.
And how do you get the job? How do you get the job? The whole process.
Absolutely.
Thing.
So I can walk you through it.
And maybe somebody else. Maybe I'll be the CRO next year. Oh.
Yeah. Who knows? We'll see.
Tell me how I would have to do it.
So this is what happens. Basically, the MUNSU hiring committee, which is chaired by the executive director of Finance and Services, who that year I'm trying to remember. His name was also Travis, but it's not the current Travis.
Travis Collins.
Yeah, Travis Collins. So he was on the hiring committee. There was a lot of drama going on in the student union that fall 2009, which I will not go into just for lack of time. And so basically this is what happens. So you see an ad. I saw it on a poster. I was listening to the meetings. People mentioned that it was in the process of being hired, advertised by posters, everything. No one had applied for the job. So basically what you do, you put in a resume, cover letter, this is why I should get the job. The hiring committee, which is made up of board members and the executive director of finance and services and the staff, go over the resumes and say, hey, I think this would be a good person for the job. So yeah, that's what happens. You apply, and then the hiring committee makes a decision, and then you're hired as an independent officer of the board who is independent and impartial to basically make sure that everything in the election runs smoothly and that any election appeals get heard. So basically you're arm's length from the board. You are employed by MUNSU as an officer of the board, but no one's really allowed to interfere with your ability to do your job.
Do you have, so what is the role of the elections committee?
Okay, so I can get into this. So what happens is the elections committee is made up
And what is the dynamic of the CRO and the elections committee?
Yeah, I can get into that. So what happens is with the elections committee, it's made up of board members who've committed that they're not running in the next election. The idea is they're...
Only board members?
I'm getting to that. So it's mainly board members. You have the chief returning officer. Let's not forget to mention the deputy, who's usually hired. This year we didn't have a deputy because they'd stepped down or something. So it's the CRO, the DRO, the members of the elections committee, and sometimes you'll have the resource coordinator or the operations and logistics coordinator will be there just as a support staff person, because the resource coordinator and the chief returning officer tend to work closely together. You're running an election, you need resources, who do you go to? The resource coordinator. Exactly. So the dynamic is that the CRO can make a ruling, say, to disqualify someone or to give a fine, or, hey, you know, you have put your posters somewhere that is not a cork board. Yes, the elections policy goes into painstaking detail about what is and is not a cork board. One of the quirky natures of MUNSU elections. But anyway.
Pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. This is the awesomeness. So basically what happens is I can make a ruling, or anyone who's CRO can make a ruling. People might not like it and say, hey, I want to appeal it to the elections committee.
Right.
So then the elections committee made up of board, CRO, DRO. Obviously, if the decision was made by the CRO, you know, you're just listening. You're not actually having a decision-making role. And the staff, the operations, logistics, and resource, hear the appeal. They hear the evidence. And then they make a decision as to whether or not the CRO actually, they make a decision to uphold it or to put it down. It's almost like a little, like, elections court, almost. Only it's not a court because there isn't lawyers and that type of thing. And then what can happen is if people aren't happy with how the elections committee's ruled, I can actually appeal it to the board of directors. Fun fact, this is the first year that you couldn't appeal it to the MUNSU executive. That was one of the changes that went through with the bylaw review. I know I've been rambling a little bit, but the point is, that's what the elections committee does.
Could you speak to the, is there room for non-board members to be on the elections committee, or do you have to be an outgoing / you basically have to be an outgoing
Under
board?
the current rules, you have to be an outgoing board member or employed as the CRO or DRO or the resource coordinator or operations logistics. Some people have brought up to me...
There seems to be a lot of oversight.
There is.
So, yeah, that's interesting. Oh, okay. So, you hear that? Radio Land? What do you think about that? Elections committees and all that is all made up of only outgoing board members.
The idea is just to rule out conflicts of interest, that you wouldn't want to have someone who's on the elections committee who's also running in the election. That would get rid
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking more like if autonomous and sovereign members of our due-paying members want to participate in overseeing and ensuring that there is a fair election.
This is another thing I forgot to mention on a historical note. At one point, Elections Canada and Elections Newfoundland and Labrador used to actually provide training to the chief returning officer, deputy, the poll captains, and the poll clerks. Just forgot to mention poll captains and poll clerks are the ones who staff the polling station back when we used to have paper ballots. But now it's all online except when the voting doesn't work, like what happened to East-West Tower. And then we go back to paper ballots. Yay. So... yeah, anyway, getting back on topic.
So, now that we're pretty good on topic here. We have a lot of time. We still have a lot of time to spare. I'll tell you, we have at least 20 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of time to spare. Now, so could you offer us some, maybe, at the end of the elections, my understanding and from my experience with it is that the CRO oftentimes makes recommendations to the board. The board, I guess, ultimately does have the power to change anything. So, or maybe they have no power at all. You never really know. So, what recommendations
could a CRO make, or
I want to know what recommendations. Actually, I'm going to say 2014 recommendations for 2014. Obviously, since you've been a CRO, things have changed a lot. We're talking about Facebook, we're talking about iPads, we're talking about the epic, I don't know, you know what I mean. There's been a lot of changes, and the nature of the MUNSU elections have evolved and adapted a lot. So what are there recommendations? Do you have any recommendations at all? Maybe there are 0 recommendations. Maybe you think it's going perfect. Where are we going to start, Jordan?
Well, I mean, there's some things that are being done right, but I'm going to start with the recommendations. A few election reports in a row have actually said we need to have regulations on social media. Like, one of the things that's been brought up is, hey, you're not allowed to campaign within the MUNSU office complex. But what if someone was on a MUNSU office computer and was posting on Facebook? Does that count as being within the MUNSU office complex? Because in our rules, we define the World Wide Web as where you vote, as where websites exist. But a lot of these regulations were kind of written in the pre-mass social media
that would
days.
spill over into the regulation right now that speaks to campaigning around polling stations.
Yeah, this
I
is
thought
the other
my
thing.
computer was a polling
yeah,
station.
I'll explain this. So what happens right now is the World Wide Web is defined as a polling station,
What?
which would be kind of a weird thing, because you could technically, as sometimes happens, is you
Can't
could
get
be
away from a polling station. I'm haunted by a polling station.
Yeah, so this is what can happen. You might be a distant student who's studying at MUN St. John's campus, even though you're living in Corner Brook or Deer Lake or Sudbury, Ontario. And technically, where you're accessing the internet is a polling station, even though it's out of province.
Jordan, did you say Sudbury, Ontario, because that's where your girlfriend's visiting? You want to say hi to her? Hi.
Yeah. I just thought I'd list it. But anyway, one of the first recommendations I'll make as well is that there are no regulations currently either on third-party advertising. You might be familiar with a ruling in the United States called Citizens United, where unions and corporations and wealthy individuals could make unlimited donations and unlimited spending.
A super PAC.
Yeah, well, super PAC. Yeah, right now there's nothing in the rules to stop like someone from creating a "I think burgers are awesome" super PAC that would lobby people on, hey, we need more burgers on campus.
I've thought of that. Oh my
So,
gosh.
like, basically what happens is, I've heard at some other student unions, there have been cases of people using robocalls to actually mislead people as to where polling stations were. And as it stands right now, the rules are designed that you can only sanction people who are candidates, campaign workers, poll clerks, poll captains, board members, or staff. There's nothing in the rules that actually allowed you to sanction an outside group that doesn't have a connection to MUN, even though with social media and all these things. I'll give you an example. Back in March 2012, there was a few individuals who decided to put up a joke poster campaign called Stay Home the Vote. And basically they were listing all these reasons why they thought people shouldn't vote. And when people made complaints, they very quickly discovered there was nothing the CRO could do about it other than say, go take down the posters, and then the next day they'd be back.
Yeah, that's I feel like we're giving away all these awesome secrets right now, but that's okay. That's okay.
It's transparency and accountability.
Yeah, that's what can we do?
I can mention a few other things. I mean, if you look at Grenfell College Student Union, and at least one of the incoming executive used to be president of Grenfell College Student Union. I'm sure if you ask this individual, they could tell you all about how at their campus they do their elections a little bit differently. Directors at large, faculty, school, constituency reps actually get voted in September. They have their nominations in like the first 2 weeks of September, and then they have like a 1 week campaign period, which is like week 2, week 3, and then voting on week 3, week 4. So you could have someone who's in their first semester of MUN who could run to be on the board, or in his case, run for president and become president of the student union in your first semester of your first year, and basically get to spend almost your entire university experience in student activism, have your by-elections in November just in case anyone steps down, and then have your general elections for executive positions. There's a few other campuses that do this, and in my election report in March 2010, I'd actually recommended that we look into this. And if you read the Muse in January 2010, there's a little bit of a mix-up where I mentioned the idea of two-tiered elections, and the Muse accidentally referred to me as a director at large instead of the chief returning officer, because the previous year I had ran to be. So, I mean, that's one thing. Another thing, anyone who read the Muse would know, I'm very much in favor of legalizing slating. For example, at the University of
Legalize it.
Exactly, and regulate it. At the University of Toronto Student Union, you can actually have slates, and the idea of slating is when you have two or more candidates that actually cooperate with each other to a common end. To give you a local example, municipally, in Portugal Cove, St. Philip's in fall 2009, there was a slate of candidates who were in favor of preserving rural heritage, about making sure you don't have like skyscrapers being built in Portugal Cove, St. Philip's. And then there was another group who was pro-development, who was like, let's modernize everything and make things urban. They actually ran on slates. And what happens is it allows people for different positions to know, oh, we can run on a common platform.
Would you see maybe anything, like, let's just say there was a 5-person slate for the 5 executive positions, and then there was incoming, or there was people or candidates who were a little bit more disenfranchised. Do you think that that would have a negative effect on the individuals? Or,
Well, I
or
mean,
do you think it would encourage them to actually find a group to...
It can actually be a little bit of both. I would have before been inclined to say, there can't be any problems with it, but I was just reading not too long ago, I can't remember where in Ontario it was, but there was a case of someone who was running on a slate, and the slate had actually wrote a campaign platform without consulting them, and their name and face and position was attached to a slate, even though they didn't know what was in the slate's platform. So yeah, there is a risk with slates of having the same problems you have with political parties and coalitions, where you get like party discipline and, oh, am I going to get kicked out of my slate? Because that's the thing with slating. There's two different practices. There's some people who only slate for the purposes of elections on a common platform, and then when the election's over, the slate dissolves. And that's more like coalition building. And in other cases, they almost act more like student union political parties that exist all year round. And I guess one of the benefits to that is that there's more of an incentive for people to actually get out and, you know, if you're a nursing rep, to not just talk to nursing students, because, oh, you're running on a slate, so you're going to want to know what the art students are talking about, and then go back to your slate and report back and almost have caucus meetings.
Right. Well, I don't know where I necessarily stand with slating.
It's more, I'm just trying to be provocative to get people to think.
Yeah, well, and the one thing is, though, Jordan, is the one thing I'm really glad is that you didn't bring up vote of confidence, because, Jordan, if there was a vote of confidence, I'll tell you, it's going to cost us a lot of money. What would happen if a bunch of people got together and voted someone out? What would happen if there was if nobody fulfilled an executive position? Jordan, there's so many unanswered questions, so I think that we should just say no on a vote of confidence, right? Why would we ever want to do a vote of confidence? That would just be crazy talk, would it not?
Au contraire, I'll give you the opposite viewpoint. So basically, just so that everyone's clear on what a vote of confidence is, it's the idea that right now, if you only have one person running, someone who manages to get anywhere between like 20 to 100 signatures,
20 and 40, I believe.
to 20 to 40 for
lower
positions, like around 50, 70-ish for directors at large.
50 to 100, yeah.
And then 50 to 100 for
Executives.
You can have someone representing the entire student body of 15,000 people because they knew how to get 20 to 100 people to sign a form to say they should get the job. Talk about the easiest interview process.
I thought it was due at 5 o'clock on Friday, not noon.
Yeah, I mean, that can really be the only barrier that happens there. What happened with votes of confidence? As you may or may not know, there's a resource center here at MUN called LGBT MUN, where they actually use votes of confidence with their executive. And
they sound crazy and undemocratic.
Well, this is actually the interesting thing. John Michael Bennett, who's with the Muse, had actually wrote something, I think it was last week or this week, where he talked about the fact that most nonprofit organizations in Newfoundland actually require votes of confidence for their board of directors, because it's the idea that you want members, even if you only have one person running, you want to ensure that the majority of the membership, the idea is that they have confidence in the people who are filling the role. So if someone comes forward who, like, you're like, you know what, I'm not really sure if that's the best person for the position, they have a way to democratically express the fact that they're not happy.
But Jordan, what happens if they were voted non-confident? Does that mean that they have to wait 6 months for the next by-election?
Well, I mean,
for that position to be filled?
That is one thing. As what happened recently, you can have non-voting board members appointed as observers, basically to discuss and debate and put forward amendments and not vote. That's one way you can address it. So, for example,
There can still be advocates and
there
people.
can still be advocates, as you might have noticed with the election report last night. There were 5 vacant positions. So what will happen when that board convenes? They're going to have to talk to the relevant societies or resource centers that represent those groups and be like, hey, we want you to send someone to our meeting. There's another approach that there's another approach that can happen where we can go more the graduate student union, which they run things like bitters, the pub and restaurant, where what they do is they actually have annual and semi-annual annual general meetings. So what can happen in the event that a position is vacant, they can basically do nominations from the floor at their annual general meeting where any member can show up, 1 member, 1 vote. So you could have a situation, oh, it's vacant because of vote of confidence. Well, we're going to call an emergency AGM where the executive director of awesomeness gets filled. And people can put forward now. It'd be just like a convention. Like right now, there are people who go to CFS conventions or CFS&L where they elect exactly. Yeah. Well, then what we could do at MUNSU is we could implement something like that, where automatically a meeting like that happens. Which, in a way, it's actually a little bit exciting and dynamic. That people come forward at these weekend conventions to run for positions that if the CFS was run like MUNSU, maybe they wouldn't come forward.
Yeah, so I'm going to just steal this idea away from you for just a minute, and then I'm going to give you the final word on vote of confidence, and we'll talk about it a little more.
Yeah.
But I, Max Page, think that vote of confidence is probably one of the most crucial and valuable things that we can do as a union. And I'm going to tell you the 3 reasons why, not that it's going to help me or not necessarily it's going to help necessarily each and every individual student, but it's going to help MUNSU as a whole, and I'm going to tell you why. 1, there's 40 positions, and when 30 of them go acclaimed, that's 30 bodies that aren't engaging with their constituency groups. So, with at least, if every single position was being acclaimed, or at least run for vote of confidence, that would be 40 people in my mind who would be preaching the good word of MUNSU for at least a week and a half. And I don't think there's any real debate on that. There'd be more people promoting it. Now, if people started running for those positions, then there'd be more and more and more, and then for at least a week and a half, it won't be just a selective amount of people trying to hustle MUNSU votes. Second, I think there would be greater accountability to your board rep. Because right now, I'm going to tell you guys a little secret about how I started with the union. I didn't think anyone was going to like me. I didn't think anyone was going to vote for me. But one of my friends said, hey, Max, we have this thing called acclamations, and there is no vote of confidence. So as long as you put your name forward and as long as no one else runs against you, you're going to get acclaimed. And when I get acclaimed, that means I do nothing, no campaigning, and no service to the students in that week. I get to sit back and relax and continue to not do my homework and watch YouTube. So for 2 years, I was acclaimed. And for 2 years, I desperately tried to find my constituencies. It was really hard to find them, and I never got to generate. So I think by having a vote of confidence, the people who are going to try to go for those roles are going to be people who are going to know that they have to campaign, and that means there are certain kind of characteristics and stuff like that to say that, you know what, I'm ready, willing, and able to seek out my constituents. And the third reason why you need to have a vote of confidence is because when people like myself who've never campaigned before are up against people who know how to campaign, who've campaigned a lot before, you're giving them an unfair advantage. And it's not just like an unfair advantage one-on-one. Now, voter turnout is so low, right? I think if I knew how to campaign better, like if I had more practice, like my 2 times at Director at Large, if I had more practice campaigning, by the time I try to serve you all at an executive level, I would have enough skills and development that I'd be able to actually reach you. And I'm sorry that I never got out there, and I'm sorry that less than 1,000 people even heard from me. That's because I don't know how to campaign, and I wish I had that opportunity to campaign more. I think if we had a vote of confidence, we would see a higher voter turnout. More people would give a shit, and it would be awesome. So, Jordan, I'm sorry. I know this is...
That's okay.
I'm here to listen to you, and because I love hearing it, but this is my experience, and these are all the reasons why I think vote of confidence will only help the union, not me, not help get my oppositionist ass elected onto the board. You know, it would be to help out everybody, including the union itself, and people would actually start paying attention. Oh my gosh, my brain, what just happened? Did I just black out?
So one of the things I can mention that would actually be a nice follow-up to votes of confidence. Right now, we only have forms, because we're not allowed to ask each other questions, apparently, when we're candidates. That was one of the reasons I withdrew, that, yeah, supposedly we can't ask each other questions because that would be slating. Hence why I'm in favor of legalizing it. But anyway.
Legalize it, baby.
Yeah, so anyway, one of the things that would help is if we actually had forums for other things. Right now in our current rules, you can have debates or forums or public assemblies for other races, but they have to be approved by the chief returning officer. So what often happens is some group wants to have a debate, and they're like, oh, but I got to go through MUNSU. And it almost like they just don't follow through with requesting. But I know times in the past, like in March 2009, LGBT MUN, actually, the Resource Center for Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans individuals, came forward to MUNSU and said, hey, we want to have a candidates debate for the 2 candidates for LGBT rep. And what happened was they actually organized a candidates debate. About 100 people came out. And people were actually more interested in that position than in the executive positions that year, because the debate was more dynamic. They took questions from the floor.
Was engaging.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that would be nice is if you combine votes of confidence with slating and more engagement, you might actually see more people be like, hey, there should be a students with disabilities rep debate, and there should be a directors at large debate, and there should be a school of nursing debate. And sometimes in the past, there have been social work candidates debates. If you had more of these debates, public forums, assemblies, which is also a nice segue to, I would love us maybe borrow a little bit from the Quebec students and have general assemblies where in the event of some big crisis, like a 50% increase in tuition or something like that, we could call a general assembly, go a little bit more 60s or 70s and be like, hey, let's get 10,000 people in a room and have a vote on the fact that
that is going to be a whole other conversation about how we get 10,000 people out of the room, because I think about that a lot. I think about it so much. How am I going to get 10,000 people to do something?
Well,
I think it might start with a fair and democratic election that engaged people and
absolutely
makes people give a shit. So this question is a random question that I want to ask Jordan, just so and this is totally subjective, and I just want to know what you think of valuable characteristics are in board members. What kind of board member do you want serving you, an executive member serving you? What are the characteristics that you look for in these people?
In general, not getting too bogged down in specific positions, people who can listen, people who know what Robert's Rules of Order are, or are willing to learn what they are, which are just rules around debating and this type of thing. I mean, it's nice if you have some previous experience in debating, be it youth parliament, debate club. It's helpful. Speaking, any of that stuff. Another thing that's good, you need to be someone who knows how to think outside the box. You're a little bit creative. When you hear problems, you think solutions. When you hear parking problem, you think parking audit, or we need more parking. You are a people person, or maybe you're more one of those policy people. Basically, what I would like is you need diversity. You need your quiet people who are more meticulous and like to take notes. You need your more outspoken people who are maybe willing to be provocative and go against the grain. Mainly, what you'd like to see in a board member is someone who knows how to listen, who is willing to go above and beyond what is required, be it the 2-hour board meeting, the 2-hour committee meeting, someone who's going to get creative. Hey, let's have a Google Plus form and allow people to engage that way.
Okay, I have a couple more questions for you. Sure. Those are great answers. I want to make sure, because I have a couple things that I want to ask. In like less than a minute, what would your ideal MUNSU look like?
Ideal MUNSU?
What's happening? What are people doing? What's
I think with an ideal student union, I think it would look a little bit more like a student government or a student governance, that essentially we wouldn't just have student media. We wouldn't just have great services like the Copy Center, the Breezeway. We would almost have our own little utopia almost, where, for example, hey, you want to go get grad photos. Well, guess what? MUNSU runs a photography studio back in the day.
Or like there's a society that does it or whatever.
We actually used to have a hair salon where you could go get your hair cut, and they would employ hairstyling students, almost more like a student-run direct democracy, where we could be a little bit more
economy.
like, yeah, we could be a little bit more like Switzerland, where it could be like, hey, we really care about an issue. Oh, you know, what's the discussion over coffee? Oh, did you hear about that referendum we had last week? You know, this is where we're getting to the theory. It's called learning democracy. It's the idea that your education and your learning, which is very important, that democracy, the goals of democracy and education should be intricately connected, that you should have democratic decision making in whether your university decides to fund a law school or a journalism school. That basically you have a direct role in deciding how your university and how your student union, your province, your nation, and the world get to decide how your scarce resources, your scarce tax dollars are being allocated.
And that's up to all of us out there in Radio Land, especially the students, to get out and actually start doing it, because it is available. I'm looking at Jordan; he does it every day. So it is possible to and it's, you know, maybe Jordan makes it look easy. I have one more question for you, Jordan. This is my little kind of thought-provoking question of the evening, and people have heard it before. But if you knew that every single undergraduate student was listening to you right now, and you were able to tell them like a sentence or something, or you just knew that you had their ear, what would you say? Would you say something serious? Would you say something like what would you want to say to these people to either resonate with them or whatever, mess with them or whatever?
Well, what I would say, probably more on a engaging note, I would say, brothers and sisters in the student movement, listen up. Let your voice be counted. Let your voice be heard. It's time that maybe we turn the world upside down and we show that this generation is going to be the generation that doesn't just talk about changing the world and our local community, but actually gets up and does it. As we saw in the budget speech, there's so many people who dream the big dreams of where a society should be going. It's so fewer that we see it done. I believe it was Margaret Mead who said that when it comes to change, oftentimes it's a small group of, that some people will complain that a small group of people couldn't change the world, but in reality, the only thing that ever has changed the world is a small group of like-minded people who get together and make a difference. It doesn't matter how small your numbers are, you can get things done. Think of any Hollywood movie, 300 or anything. You don't need to be big in numbers. If you know how to get things done, you can, I guess for lack of better terms, defeat the Goliaths and be the David with a rock that takes down that giant Goliath of student debt.
Yes, absolutely. So, and we're going to leave it there. I want to thank you very much. Jordan Lester is a communications poli-sci student. He's started a lot of societies at MUN. Been the executive of the Resource Center, CRO of the Student Union, and also a candidate for a local municipal election, if I'm not mistaken.
Tana Paradise, I got 800 votes. That was fun.
There we
With
go.
6 volunteers and a mass mail out and knocking on like 500, 600 doors. I got 800 votes at the age of 24.
That's brilliant. So
had I got 650 more votes, I would have been a counselor right now.
And I just want to say once again, when what Jordan was saying there at the end of our interview about being involved and being engaged and stuff like that, Jordan is the role model, and Jordan is the one that you need to ask if you want to, if you're anywhere anxious or worried about any of this stuff.
Finally had a closing note. On a board member, you need someone who's humble, can admit that they make mistakes, and that if they make a mistake, they do something to fix it. They don't try to hide it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think more importantly, and what I've learned since I've been on the board for 2 years and now I'm finally outgoing, I'm kind of coming out of the haze and stuff like that, there's a lot of things you can do to be significant, and a lot of times the role that people like Jordan have played have had more of an impact on me than a lot of the role that a lot of the board members have played. So anyways, we are running at it. We are now over a time limit. This has been Rustling Pages with Max Page and Chris Russell. Chris couldn't make it out tonight, and we've had Jordan here speaking with us all evening. So you can find us on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, Facebook, MySpace, Reddit. You can find us on 4chan. You can find us on, I don't know, you can't find us on half of the stuff that I'm saying.
Wow.
But check out the stuff on YouTube, and feel free to tweet us, call us, text us, whatever. If you think what Jordan and I said was total crap tonight, and
Tell
you
us.
You
We're listening.
don't believe a word that we say, good. You shouldn't believe everything you
We
hear.
provoked you to think.
Yeah, exactly.
act.
Great. So thank you very much. And
Glad to be on the show.
Yes, thank
I'd
you
more
again,
than willing
Jordan.
come on again, and maybe we'll see some other people come forward. Maybe I've provoked someone to be like, hey, I want to do an interview. Come on up and do it.
Absolutely. It's so easy.
You don't know till you don't try.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night, folks.